So Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like you and I spoke about this so long ago, and now it's finally here. I absolutely loved So Thirsty. I've been looking forward to this literally all week. Work has been crazy, and I've just been so excited to be able to talk to you, and I know everyone else is too. So I'm sure you all know Rachel, but she is the USA Today bestselling author of Black Sheep, Such Sharp Teeth, Cackle, and The Return, which was nominated for a Bram Stoker Award for Superior Achievement in a First Novel. Her newest novel, So Thirsty, is about a woman who must learn to take life by the throat after a night out leads to irrevocable changes. So, Rachel, thank you again for joining us.
Thanks for having me, letting me hang out.
Of course, you're always welcome here. Seriously, do not be surprised if I email you about your next book to come back. Um, so I guess to begin with, there's some quotes early on in So Thirsty that to me really foreshadow the events to come. One being, what would have happened to us if the sun had not been interrupted? And the other being, there's no cure for getting older, no solution for the harsh seep of time, save for maybe an attitude adjustment, a positive outlook, which I'm capable of. Was that foreshadowing intentional about what's to come for both Sloane and Naomi?
Yeah, definitely. I'm
Yeah.
like, I love a little foreshadow, especially like this book when I sat down to write it, I knew it was going to be a vampire book. I knew it was going to be about aging. Um, and so I was like leaving little breadcrumbs because the like actual vampire stuff doesn't really happen until I don't think they actually changed until maybe 100 pages in. I
Yeah.
don't know, but I wanted readers to know that it was coming and to like trust me that like, don't worry, this is going somewhere. This is not just like a woman who's just like, my life. So it's important for me to like kind of leave those like little vampire nuggets in early on. So um people like and also like I didn't know this at the time, but they put a vampire novel on the cover. So like but it kind of works out. So when people are reading, they're like, oh yeah, I could this is like she's talking about the sun a lot. Like the first line is sunlight severs me from sleep. So yeah, the promise of vampirism hopefully will get people turning pages and then they'll get invested in the characters along the way.
So it's interesting to me because I actually didn't realize the foreshadow part until I had finished the book and gone back and then noticed it more when I was getting ready for this meeting. I mean, I had highlighted those notes in my Kindle when I was reading just because I loved the lines and I found them relatable. I remember reading it the first time, especially that first half where we're really getting to know the characters, just feeling like I related so much to Sloane and just thinking like, wow, I feel for her. And I think we've all been there, especially as women. Um, were, did you draw from personal experience, either from yourself or for friends, for either of the characters of Sloane or Naomi?
Yeah, I say like all of my characters are me and none of them are me. Um, I have to put a little distance because I remember with The Return, which was my first novel, like, I think first novel, you're kind of a little like blissfully ignorant. And that book came out, and there's a lot of like myself in those characters. And I got tagged in reviews that were like, these characters are all so unlikable. And I was like,
Oh no.
so I have to be careful about being like, oh, my characters are me. But like they're like funhouse mirror versions of me. So I say that Naomi is a version of me on like my wildest night, like where I'm like, let's go skinny dipping and like do crazy stuff and like steal a car. Like I have nights like that, but they're few and far between, thankfully, because I'd probably be in jail. But like my everyday in a rut, like more depressive self, I think leans into that Sloane of like, this is kind of is what it is. And like, I kind of have to just like, I don't want to rock the boat. So I'm just going to like ignore all of my needs and go through the motions because it's easier. I think um, it's comfortable staying in the safety of the everyday, even if it's unhappy. So yeah, there's a lot of like my personality in both of those characters. And then I think, the aging stuff and the like part of the novel that's both of the characters before their transformation reckoning with like, I made all these choices and now this is my life. And like, how do I feel about that? That's a lot of like, I turned 35 this year, and same with like my friends. Some of them are having kids, and like one of my close friends has two kids that are older and is divorced and like starting over. And this weird part of life where I think when you're in your 20s, you feel like all your big choices are ahead of you. And then you get into your 30s and you realize either I've made all these big choices, how do I feel about them? Or you realize like, oh no, like life doesn't stop when you buy a house or have kids. Like there's still more things that need to happen that I think a lot of us just didn't really, we thought like, oh, well, when we find our partner and then when we, land, put roots down somewhere, then that's that. And then we got to that and we're like, well, what now? So all of that was based on my own experience of, I bought a house and I was like taking out the trash every day and just like, this is my life. Like, so part of that angst is obviously in the book.
I completely relate. I am 34, going to turn 35 next year. And it's like you wake up one day and you realize that like you said, you've made those decisions, but also all the small decisions that you made in your 20s have kind of added up and culminated into being where you are. And sometimes it's hard to look out and figure like, where am I supposed to go next? And it's interesting to me because even when someone's found the cure to getting older, she has turned into a vampire. She's still struggling with like, okay, well, what comes next? Like, what do I do now? And it's like, even though she's found that solution that it seems like she's been searching for, it brings her more discomfort and even like more potential issues. So it's almost like no matter if you could find a cure to your problems, it's just going to create more problems. And it's an interesting paradox that I feel like she's found herself in. It's also interesting because I feel like her and Naomi switch places when they turn into vampires. It feels like Naomi's like, hey, let's stay with this group, let's learn from them. And Solon's like, no, we can't trust them. We should go out on our own and do our own thing. Um, did you ever have a version of the story where they stayed with the vampire group the whole time and didn't run and go back, or was this always the plan from the beginning?
I there was no plan. The plan
Okay.
was there was no plan. I am I wish I was an outliner. I wish I was a plotter because um I got to when I started this book, I didn't like at first the vampires weren't this like kind of like hot Eurotrash group that they became. At first they were kind of like just weirdos and like aristocratic weirdos. And I had to like when I pitched the novel to my editor, there's an interesting switch that happens. For my first three novels, I wrote them before I sold them. And so I could kind of just like go off and write the books, not thinking about anything else other than like, this is what I want to do. And then you get to a point in your professional career where like and Black Sheep was the first book that like was already under contract before I wrote it. So I had to like take it to my editor first and be like, this is what I'm thinking. And your editor will give you feedback. And so with So Thirsty, I came up with the name. This is the only book I've ever written where I came up with the title first. And I was like, I'm so clever. I'm going to write a vampire book called So Thirsty. But I went to my editor and I said, this is what I'm thinking. It's two friends. It's going to be like Thelma and Louise. It's going to be called So Thirsty. And she was like, if you're going to write a vampire novel and you're going to call it So Thirsty, there's going to probably be an expectation it's a little bit sexy. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's where like the vampire orgy came in and all these characters happened and it kind of shifted what the book was about a little bit because then it wasn't just about aging, it was about desire and thinking about vampirism in that way. But after the orgy scene, I had this like mental breakdown. There's no other way to put it because I finished that part and was like, well, what next? And I didn't know where to take them. But it's interesting you say that they switch positions because I'm not sure there is a sensible like like
Yeah.
part solution here because like I love when characters are in opposition to each other but both have a point. That's my favorite. Like I don't really have outright villains in my novels because I think all of the like antagonists sort of have a valid point. Um, so Naomi being like, let's stay with the people who can help us figure this out, that's valid. And Sloane being like, they just turned us into monsters. Let's get the fuck out of here is also like a solid point. Um, and I think them leaving, they had to leave. Um, I think otherwise, like the vampires are such big personalities that they would have just taken over the novel. So I needed to like test Sloane and Naomi and have that conflict start without the vampires there to kind of overshadow. Otherwise, it just would have been like, and like there's a romantic subplot with Sloane and Henry. And like I didn't want the book isn't a romance. The book is a character study and a friendship story ultimately, but the romance is necessary for Sloane's arc. But I didn't want the romance to like, I didn't want it to become about the romance. And if the vampire stayed there the whole time, I think that would have just bogged down the like the meat of like what I was trying to write about, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's interesting what you said about both of them being right, because I think as a reader, that puts us in an interesting position, but also a unique position where we're not picking sides, or at least I didn't pick a side while I'm reading this book. I can see both viewpoints. I think, if you relate to one of the characters more than the other, then you probably may lean towards that character's decision more. But even so, you can still see where the other one's coming from. And I also think that that makes the romance part of this book more interesting too, because I felt like Sloane learned more about herself from her friend Naomi than she did any of the men in her life at the end of the day. And I feel like it was a real love letter to friendships and like how important those friendships are, but especially our younger friendships with friends that we've had through our whole lives who have seen us at like probably our weirdest and most awkward to now our adult selves. It feels really invaluable to be able to know those characters and to know that they've been friends for so long and to see like that character arc within the two friendships too.
Yeah. I mean, I love to write about friendship and I think it's very interesting too the older you get to, when you're connected to people who knew you when you were so much younger because it's so hard to have long-term relationships because we change so much and part of this novel was like like was like a pressure test of like a long-term friendship because I had a friend from the time I was like 3 years old to the time I was 20. And like me going off to college broke that friendship. But I've had another friend since I was 13 and we're still friends today. And like I think we will continue to be friends. Like even though I've moved away and even though she will probably have children and I'm not going to have kids, like I think the foundation there is strong enough and like thinking about what makes a relationship stick and then what breaks relationships apart is very interesting to me and like having them go through this big like transformation where they it's fiction, it's horror, so they become vampires, but like in life we go through these like big transformations and like there's something beautiful about those relationships lasting that test and I think that's more like life affirming and heartwarming than like a romance. So to me, like those are the relationships and the like that's the like life, the good life stuff
Yeah,
in this
I
book
completely
and
agree.
in life itself.
No, I completely agree with that. One of the themes throughout the book is the aging in women and our kind of our battle with aging, but also our battle with our self-reflection and the way society views us as we continue to age. What do you want readers to take away from this? And how does Sloane's experience in losing her reflection as when she becomes a vampire play into it?
I think like the origin story of this book was me looking in the mirror one day and just being like picking my reflection apart, which I've done my entire life, and just being like so frustrated with it and being like, well, what if I didn't have a reflect? Like vampires don't have a reflection. Like, would that make me feel better? And then being like, no, like it wouldn't, because the issue is not the reflection. The issue is me. And like I had my wisdom teeth taken out when I was like 17, and I had a horrible time with it. Horrible time. My whole face, like I was like high on Percocet and I like looked like a chipmunk. And I remember like looking in the mirror and crying and being like, I've taken my own reflection for granted. Like I've taken my own face for granted. Like just like total like teenage freak out. But I think we so often, especially as women, and I can only speak to my own experience, we are taught to think about everything that's wrong with us or that we would like to fix instead of appreciating what we have. And I wanted, it's hard because like I also wrote this short story called Goblin, which is about disordered eating. And it's hard to be honest about the way, the ways that I have felt and the way that I know a lot of people feel without having it, trusting the reader to know that it's not a judgment and it's not something I think. It's all how it's like negative self-talk. So it's difficult to find the balance in that way. And in So Thirsty, I'm not like when Sloane's like picking apart her appearance and crow's feet and whatever, like it's not saying that those things are bad. It's her reckoning with that for herself. And I hope, oh, there's a cute doggy. Oh, sorry, I'm distracted by a very cute dog. Um, I I hope that readers take away from the book, like it doesn't matter how much, like if you have 2 weeks, if you have 50 years, like how are you going to spend your time? And like, are you going to love yourself and value yourself enough to be like, I'm going to go after what I want? Or are you just going to like beat yourself up and or stay silent and not do anything? Because like to me, the real horror in So Thirsty is not the like throats getting ripped out. It's what if Sloane never got turned into a vampire and just went back to her life and just kind of like she was dead before. She just didn't know it. And so like I think the thing I want readers to take away is like, how am I living my life? Like how am I spending my time? Um, so yeah, and it's tricky talking about subjects like aging and things like that because I don't want, I feel like I get better as I get older, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of us do. Um, but it would be dishonest to have a character who's reckoning with that, who's not like, should I get Botox? Oh my God. Like, so
Well, and I think it's interesting what you said too about she was dead before she became a vampire because I almost when I was reading the book, I felt like the half of the book where she is still human, to me it feels almost like dreary and not colorful, and I almost was seeing it in black and white as I was reading it. And then it's like once she meets the vampires, even when before she becomes a vampire, when she enters this party, it feels like there's so much color now in her life, whether she wants it or not. And then once she's turned, I feel like she's really is forced to confront that part of herself that hates not being comfortable. But because of that, it adds so much more color to her world. And I also feel like she starts to really appreciate Naomi more too, as like as a result of that. Um, and so I mean, again, I think that just goes back to kind of the power of friendship, but also the power of female friendships, because it turns out they both have more in common and, struggle with the same things more than each other knew at the end of the day. And so to me, it was just like a really beautiful message to take away from the book.
yeah, I think, it's easy to assume that everybody else is doing better than we are. And um, often that's just not true. We just don't want to be honest with the
Yeah.
people that are close to us. Or we fail to be able to articulate it ourselves until it's, you know, put to the test.
There's the scene in the book with the gas station where I feel like all of the action really starts to happen and culminate. It's a pretty grisly scene. Can you explain to us like what goes into writing a scene like that? I feel like we have a lot of characters, they're all moving, there's a lot of action, and there's dialogue. So is it difficult to write a scene like that? Does it go through a lot of rewrites? How did that scene end up looking the way it did?
So this scene was specifically inspired by my favorite vampire movie, which is Let the Right One In, the pool
Okay,
scene,
yeah.
which is like fucking good. And I wanted to write a pool scene. And so that's how the gas station scene like came about. Like I wanted this like oh shit, like big vampire, like satisfying, bloody, intense action scene. Um, it is intimidating. Well, I shouldn't generalize. For me, it was intimidating to like be like, I have an idea for like an action sequence. How am I going to pull that off? And think the I went into it just being like, don't overthink it. Like, try not to think too much about it and just visualize what's happening and like take it from there. So I think the key was to not intimidate myself by thinking too much about it and to just try and have fun writing it. My biggest rule when I'm writing is if I am not having fun, then there's a problem. Like if I'm not having fun writing it, no one's going to have a good time reading it. And like if it's that like when you're on a first date and you're like, this isn't working, like you just know it's not there. Like it's that like intangible thing. Like when I'm sitting down to write, I need to have that like click and flow. It needs to be easy. So I went into that scene trying not to think too much about it, thinking a lot about the pool scene and what I enjoyed about that scene. And like it's kind of like who would be doing what. And like Tatiana is kind of like the most mysterious one. So like she gets like a real violent moment. And then like Henry's the cool guy. And so he's like smoking a cigarette at the gas station, which I have a funny story about that. Originally, he just smokes a cigarette, flicks it, and everything blows up. And the copy editor was like, that doesn't happen. And my like immediate thought was like, what about Zoolander? Like that's what happens in Zoolander. And like maybe the issue here is that as a writer, I'm like, what about Zoolander? So, but apparently there needed to be, so I needed to add a fire in the in the like convenience store to make that work. But like, he's the cool guy, so he flicks a cigarette and then everything blows up. So just thinking about characters and like what what I like about action scenes and like taking that inspiration, but not being like that, ignoring the like little demon voice in the back of my head that's like, you can't do this, you're gonna fuck it up, it's not gonna go fast enough. But like, so um yeah, but that's how I approached
I
that scene.
I feel like you absolutely nailed it. I mean, it's fun. It moves the way it should. I mean, the pacing's perfect. Um, Also like the vampires just seem so cool in it. Henry definitely is like the cool guy. I also just learned something. I too thought that if you just threw a cigarette, it would catch it on fire. So, I
Apparently
think
not.
I've
I don't
made
recommend doing it,
myself.
but
Yes, please, no one go test this
apparently
out.
Zoolander is not scientifically accurate. Who
Who would
knew?
know? Um, Was it important for you that Sloane and Henry not end up together so quickly or at all in the book? I mean, that feels like it's a slow burn romance. I know it is a subplot, but it is in the book. But it doesn't happen immediately. I mean, she's kind of slow. He feels like he's kind of taking it a bit slow too, even though he wants to move faster than her. Was that important to you, that pacing for their relationship?
Yeah, I think the romance is to me like in all of I haven't written a ton of romance, but like in Such Sharp Teeth there's a romantic subplot, and in So Thirsty there's a romantic subplot, and like I think romance does a lot of character work. I think it's easy to like shit on romance as a genre, but like there's a lot of character work in romance, and like especially the challenge that I'm setting up for Sloane is at the beginning of the novel, she's somebody who is depriving herself and like lives a monotonous life and is not worth like doesn't think it's worth it to take a risk and open herself up. So Henry represents desire, he represents validation that she's not getting. He represents like a challenge for her to step out of her comfort zone and to like open up to somebody new. And so it was very important for me to have that relationship in the novel. And also, like, I do think a lot of people pick up a vampire book and they have some sort of expectation that there is some sort of romance. And like, I'm happy to lean into that. Um, I love Interview with a Vampire. I love, like, you know, there's a lot of romance in those books, but there's a lot of, character history. There's so much else. Um, that I don't think it like dilutes anything. I think it just enhances it. So, and the pacing of it, it was in like, if she just met him and then was just like, magically, all of my issues are solved because I've like met this like dashing stranger, I don't think it would feel true to life. She has to like really, and it is over like it's over a couple days, but they're very intense days. It's she has to like break down to the point where like she knows that she's not who she was before for it to like for the relationship to develop. Um, but and like I didn't want it to be like at the end of the book, it's not like they ride off into the sunset together, if you don't count the epilogue, like Sloane knows, like, and she says, I forget the exact line, but like, someday I will be ready to love you. Um, but like not now. But it's like, I think some relationships, like romance has love has the ability to like change us and like inspire us. And, you know, even just like a hot hookup can rewire your brain. So I think like Sloane needs it. She hasn't had intimacy and she like has been telling herself that like it's not safe. And I think Henry represents like he he's genuinely, I mean, he's a vampire, but he's genuinely into her and cares about her and like there's a real chemistry there. So it's important for her character work and like it's also just fun to be like, yeah, they're gonna like fuck on a, a big ship at the Ren Fair. Like, you know, gotta give the people what they want.
It was a perfect setting. I mean, I think the romance in So Thirsty is incredibly well done. It doesn't feel like it's forced just to just throw some romance in because it is a vampire book. I do want to ask about the orgy scene. I mean, I feel like I kind of
Bring
have
it. Yeah.
to. I mean, when you write a scene like that, do you write it and then just have to like step away for a second, or like if you're like, okay, I've got that done, like let me fast forward. I mean, how do you feel writing a scene like that?
I think because it came about like after the discussion with my editor, like if I had thought of it at the beginning, again, like I feel like it's how I push the gas station scene. Like if I think too much about it, I'm not like I'm gonna like chicken out. Um, so and the purpose of that scene is not just to like it is to show like the vampires are very hedonistic and very like vampires don't deprive themselves and like that's like a core thing that like really inspired me in the like crafting of the book to be like a lot of us live our whole lives on this idea of deprivation and like what am I not allowed to do, what am I not allowed to say, what am I not allowed to eat, like all of this, and to like throw that out the window and be like what do I want. And vampires are very what like they just go after what they want. So the orgy scene was in part to show that. And it was also like, what is going to make my protagonist Sloane the most uncomfortable? Like, what is like the worst possible situation that she could find herself in? And like an uptight, like unsatisfied, like you know, very self-conscious person to have to like show up at a party and be like, oh my God, that's what this party is. And to just have to sit there, like that's a nightmare scenario. And so like everything that everybody else in that scene does is designed to make her as uncomfortable as possible. So it was less about me being like, all right, like who's stroking who, than to be like, all right, so, you know, Illy's gonna grab Miri's hair and pull it back, and it's gonna be like this like hot but like kind of scary thing. And like she's gonna have to be like, oh my God, what's happening? And like every single thing that happens in the scene is to just challenge her. So approaching it from that way made it easier as like someone who was raised Catholic to get it down on the page.
Yeah, I feel like there's nothing like a surprise orgy to really make you uncomfortable. Um, so I can only imagine how poor Sloan feels. I mean, she's already kind of like, what is going on? We don't know these people.
Not
And
a
then,
great night for her.
yeah, it's not. It's really not.
At the
Um,
time, in retrospect, maybe it was more a gift than a curse, but
I think so. Yeah, but I think in the moment, I too probably have been like, what is going on right now? Is there a version of So Thirsty where Naomi dies?
yes, actually there were like originally I was like, I mean, I in an earlier draft she was a little bit more like uh more of a pill, and like I think this draft she kind of she got her she became a little bit more like less, she's still challenging, but she is a little bit kinder in this draft. But in the previous draft I was like I could kill her because, but it was more for me like I'm a bit sensitive. um I get described a lot as like my books get described as cozy, and I don't have an issue with that. Like people are gonna like, you know, say whatever they want to say about your work and like however they want to categorize it. That's fine with me. It's not my business. But I worry sometimes that I'm sensitive as a woman in the genre, that like cozy is like a way to like be like, well, she writes horror, but she writes cozy horror. And so
Yeah.
there's like this, I feel a little bit like I'm getting elbowed out. And I'm like, no, I write fucking horror books. Like, and a lot of the horror in my book is like the real shit, not the vampires. Like, so I just get a little sensitive about that. So I think in drafts, when I sit down to write, I'm like, yeah, I'd kill Naomi, like, blah. But then like I'm actually writing and I'm like, no, that doesn't make sense for the story that I'm telling and like my voice ultimately. So um yeah, but there was an early draft where I'm like, yeah, like fuck it, let's kill her. I'll show everybody. Um, but if it doesn't serve the story, I'm not going to do it. So I think it would
That
have been
makes
cheap.
Yeah, I appreciated that she stays. I mean, she's alive at the end. I think,
Mhm.
I agree with you. I think it may have felt cheap if it would have went that route. And I think it's what we're expecting as readers almost, that this friendship's actually not going to make it because one of
Yeah.
them's no longer here. Your books redefine typical monsters and how they're portrayed. So you have vampires and So Thirsty, werewolves and Such Sharp Teeth, and witches and Cackle. What is your process of writing those monsters and characters from such a fresh perspective?
When I start writing a book, I've learned that I need to have like the horror element, whether it be like the monster or like in Black Sheep, it's less of a monster than it is like cults or Satanism, like groupthink. Um, but I need like, and like also she's the Antichrist. Like I need to have like a an idea of what I'm going to explore alongside that, and they need to be like in tandem. Like for So Thirsty, it was me looking in the mirror and being like, vampires don't have reflect. What if I explored aging through vampires? And with Such Sharp Teeth, it wasn't like I want to write about werewolves. It was like I was thinking about how exhausting it is to like exist inside a body and how we're all alone inside our bodies and we don't have control over these meat sacks that we're stuck inside. And also like as a woman, the cyclical nature of existing in a body. And I was like, how come there's not more lady werewolf books? Like that's like the perfect thing to like explore all these things that I'm feeling. So my approach, like it has to be, the example I use is like, I would love to write like a Mothman book, but like what, like I'm like, I could write a Mothman book about anxiety, but anxiety is too broad. Like I need something like very specific in. And like for my next novel, it's like a possessed house novel, but it's about like how the world can make us feel crazy and then be like, oh, but like you're crazy. Like, no, you like you're driving me crazy. So like there has to be like something that goes together. Or otherwise, like if I have like a really cool monster idea, it could fall flat if there's not like the substance underneath it. So both together.
Yeah, I that makes sense. And I think that's why your monsters and your books work so well because they're not just there falling into like the stereotypical monster tropes. I mean, they really are so much more. I also am very glad that you wrote a lady werewolf book because we definitely needed it and we need more of them. Because I mean it's insane every time you pick up a werewolf book or even a movie or show, it's they're always represented as males.
Yeah.
You
Shout out
so
to Ginger Snaps. I saw
yeah,
somebody
ginger
say that.
snaps.
Yeah.
So you do have a new book coming out next year, Play Nice. How was the writing process for it compared to your previous books?
It was actually, it might have been my easiest. I hope it doesn't suck. I love it. But
I'm sure it
like,
doesn't.
I'm
I'm
like
sure it doesn't.
me being like, it was easy. Um, I try and do something a little bit different every time to challenge myself because I don't want to write the same book over and over again. Um, so in Play Nice, there's a book within a book, and like
Oh,
that book
nice.
has like annotations, which I'm shocked they let me do. But um, so the book within a book, I was nervous about that because that's like something new. And like with So Thirsty, I was like, I'm gonna do a road trip because all my previous books kind of had like big set pieces and they just took place there. Um, so yeah, and I thought that was gonna be hard because it's like two different perspectives. But I was able to kind of lock in pretty easily and like switch between like I usually try not to work on multiple projects at once because I write close first person. So it was a little bit difficult because I'm writing, the book takes place from the perspective of my protagonist in the present, and then the book within a book is her mother, who wrote like an Amityville horror style book about her time in the house. But I think because it was Amityville style, and I don't know who here has actually read Amityville, the Amityville horror, that book is fucking ridiculous.
It's
There's like
insane.
exclamation points all over the place, like because it's like not particularly well written and it's kind of wacky and out there. Like, not saying the book within a book is not well written. Like, I tried to find a good balance, but like, I didn't have to, like, I had a little bit more room to play and to be like, there's sludge coming from the pipes, and then being like, but she's exaggerating and like play with the truth a little bit.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And I think my the other book that I had a really easy drafting process with was Such Sharp Teeth because I just locked into the protagonist's voice so easily. And like that book was a nightmare to edit. And luckily this one was a little bit easier. But if I really lock into a protagonist's voice right away, it makes the whole process much easier. Where like, um, you know, I think I oscillate every book. Like I have two kinds of protagonists. I have my sad sacks, like Annie and Elise and Sloane, and then I have my like like self-assured, like kind of wild ones like Rory and Vesper, and my protagonist of this book, Cleo. I think those characters are a little bit easier for me to write, the ones who are kind of like can be assholes or who are like very like sure of themselves because it's
Yeah.
less like angst in the narrative and more external stuff. So I think those are just easier for me to write. So I had a lot of fun and like it felt good to be like it felt good to be in like the haunted house space and like playing with demons, and it was just like a lot of fun. So
I'm really excited for it. It's a great title too, by the way. I
thank
feel like your books
you.
have the best titles. I'm really excited. I think you can pre-order it now too.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll make sure that everyone has the link too, so people can pre-order it. You write social inks really well. Um, you seem, I mean, it mirrors Shirley Jackson, Joyce Carol Oates. They really do cross genre writing. Have you ever written outside the genre? And if not, have you considered it?
So I have written, like, I didn't always write horror, but um I was a like I used to do screenwriting. That was my major in college. So um I did write one horror screenplay, but um I kind of came to writing prose and writing speculative fiction around the same time in my mid 20s. I've written like non-horror, but it's always speculative. Like there's always some supernatural or sci-fi or some kind of like this isn't of our world element. I think it's not as much fun for me if there's not that thing, because then it feels more like, I don't know, it feels more like homework or
Yeah.
like I'm exploring something in the real world where like if I can have that escape, that's like that's the real fun of writing to me. So um yeah, usually there's always some sort of supernatural, and it might not be like capital H horror, might be like more sci-fi or yeah, like in my my short fiction collection, Bad Dolls, there's a story called Bachelorette, and like nothing supernatural happens. It's just kind of like creepy and weird. But I do love Shirley Jackson and Joyce Carol Oates, and um, like I love Shirley Jackson the way she can just make you feel her books feel like or her like stories feel like little panic attacks.
They
And
do.
like I as someone with an anxiety, I shouldn't like that, but I do. And I always like aspire to like, especially in short fiction, to like craft that like, wait, what's happening? And this shouldn't be there, like that like escalation of um I think it's called The Demon Lover. That story is like where it's like a woman who's waiting for her fiance to come pick her up for the wedding, and it's just like escalates and escalates, and you realize like things aren't going the way she thinks they're going to go, and it just gets worse and worse and worse. And there's a story about like just going to the dentist. That one's crazy too. I love that. I just wrote a short story for an anthology that I don't think I can talk about. That was very like, I want this to feel like a Shirley Jackson story with that anxiety. So
Oh,
um
I'm excited.
but yeah, usually there's always something supernatural because like it's just way more fun.
Yeah, no, I would understand that. I get the point too of, it feeling like it could be almost like homework if it's not within that realm.
I don't want to deal with my actual issues. I want to like hide them in a werewolf. Like
Right,
that's how I
exactly.
want to proceed.
Well, I mean, it's like there's so much going on in the world too right now. Like maybe we
Yeah,
don't need to like face reality head on
yeah.
sometimes in books. So we have about 14 minutes left. Are you okay if we open it up for general
Yeah, of course.
questions from everyone? Okay. So if you have a question, feel free to take yourself off mute.
Hi, I have a question. Hey,
Hey,
Rachel.
how are you?
I'm good. How's it going?
Good.
So it's like a two-part question. One is you've spoken about how the So Thirsty was kind of cathartic for you. Um, I was just wondering when in the process of writing it did you start to realize, oh, this is actually helping me, or like my life is informing this, or but like, and the second part is, did it always? I feel like I love how you end it kind of on a dime. Like the whole book is her struggle, and then almost like the moment she finally like moves forward, that's the end of the book because that's what it's about. But did it always end exactly as she kind of shifts into accepting the future? So
First of all, I'm obsessed with your cat. It did always end at
she's
that,
my
like,
familiar. Yeah.
um, it did always end there, like,
Okay.
because the book is really about her arc. So there's
Mhm.
not much story left after she's like, all right, this is what I am. I have to accept it. And like, I'm gonna live my life. Like, I'm not gonna like hide anymore. Like, this is what it is. Like, you could have 50 more pages of her hanging out with the vampires and it would be fun, but there's nothing to like, there's not really a point other than it being like them just hanging out. So yeah, it did always end there. It always ended in the mall. It always ended like
Mhm.
with the two of them together. And then I think the catharsis always comes the violent scene. Like the scene at the rest stop, and then the scene where Naomi breaks up with Lee, and like Sloane's talking about the cold good, like all the stuff that you share with somebody and like having to like let go of all of that when a long-term relationship ends. Like that stuff kind of came up for me when writing. And then the very end where the like Sloane gets very violent. And then I think the book always ended in the dream mall, but like there's her tossing the penny into the fountain, and then there's like an extra like little couple sentences. Those came like in edits. So I wrote the book, and then in editing that little bit got tacked on. And that was really me like through editing kind of honing the message of like really committing to life. And like again, like when I start writing the books, I'm like, this is going to be dark and scary. And then like as I'm writing it, like you spend so much time working on it, you put your heart and soul into it, like you care about these characters. And I think like wanting Sloane and wanting readers to take away this message of like life is fucking messy and hard, but it's also beautiful and it's worth living. Like drink it up, like go out there and like do the thing. That was really cathartic for me because I think it was like something that I needed to hear myself that I didn't know until it came out on the page.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it really left me like shook because it like that resonates. That is just so powerful in the book that yeah, I'm glad you kind of went with that and sort of allowed yourself to kind of include all of that in the book and let it go there. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Also, I think I just like violence in rest stops because between that and then Nat Cassidy's Rest Stop, it's a good year for violence in rest stops.
Yeah, Nat Rest Stop is like it's such a genius. And like When the Wolf Comes Home is so good. It's out in April. That's his next one. I think it's the best thing he's done, which is really saying something. So
It's really incredible. I cried so much though. So
yeah.
Okay, I'll dive. Hi.
Hi.
So I guess this is not really with the story per se, but I did see, I guess you're mentioning the anthology. Is that emo one that I saw a post somewhere?
It's a different one, but the emo
Oh, different one. Okay.
But the emo anthology also doesn't have a supernatural. That one, like my bachelorette story, it's not supernatural, but it is like fucked up. That's
Okay.
probably one of the more fucked up things I've ever written. So look forward to that.
Yeah, finger snaps. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I guess, and then this is kind of not really related to that, but I guess just what is the I guess go quick. What is the best book you've read this year? And what is a story that exists that you wish you had written?
So I think best book this year, probably a tie between American Rapture by CJ Lead and The Dissonance by Sean Hamill. I think those were my two favorites. A story that I wish I wrote. There's a movie called Colossal with Anne Hathaway and Jason Sudeikis. And Anne Hathaway like is dealing with alcoholism, and she like goes back to her hometown and she discovers that there's like a kaiju like across the world, and she discovers that she is linked to the kaiju, and like every time the kaiju goes on a rampage, it's like actually her when she's getting drunk. Um, and and like the movie takes like kind of an unexpected turn, and like Jason Sudeikis is great in it. Anne Hathaway is great as always, but like it's just this like weird little indie movie where but it's like so original and like such a cool idea. And like anytime someone's like, what's something that you wish you wrote? I'm like, oh, Colossal. But I really recommend it if you haven't seen it. It's not horror, but it is like it is speculative. So it has that like obviously there's a giant kaiju in it. So
Thanks, Sauce.
I was hoping more people would start calling me Haas, and nobody did. So I appreciate that.
I feel like you could like change your bio on Instagram to like Rachel
Yeah.
Haas Harrison.
Yeah. I missed an opportunity there.
It's not too late. You still can.
It's true. Yeah. Well, we're coming to the end of the So Thirsty cycle, and now I have to start
That's true.
playing nice.
That's true. Although maybe it
Well, I
makes
have,
it
I have a few more
funnier.
minutes before I have to shift into obnoxious promo mode.
I mean, is there any like adaptation news or anything that you could tell us about your books? Because I feel like they would all make such great movies that I'm like selfishly hoping that they
I'm
will be
also
good
selfishly
movies.
hoping. Drinks would be on me for everyone. Nothing. 2 of the 5 are currently under option. I can't say which ones, and it's like I don't know. One of them seems a little bit more promising than the other, but nothing solid. So fingers crossed. If I keep writing books, I feel like they're gonna have to pay attention to me eventually, like if I keep just like showing up, I feel like maybe eventually something will happen. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I come from a screenwriting background. Like I'm a very visual, like I see everything as I write. So like, I'm so thirsty for an adaptation. Like I would love that to happen, but nothing super exciting that I can share.
Well, I know, and I know you'll have something to tell us. Like I can feel it. It's coming. You won't be thirsty for long. If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to ask.
Okay, I have one kind of selfish question that everyone else may not appreciate, but there's one part, like a very tiny part in So Thirsty, where Sloane talks about when she was in high school, she had this whole thing where, or maybe it was middle school, but she called out this misogynistic English teacher for how like rude he was about female writers. Is that like a real thing that you did or a friend did? It's like a real story.
It's not a real story that happened to me, but I was thinking about there was I had one friend in college who kind of just like would hang out with anybody. Like she didn't have standards. And she had this really fucking annoying friend. And like I couldn't stand him. And he was such an asshole. And like we would hang out, the 3 in like a group, and I'd just be like, he sucks. Like, why doesn't she see that? And then one of our other friends hung out with us one time, and like we left. And as soon as we left the party, she was like, that guy fucking sucks. I can't stand him. And I was like, oh, that's so validating. And I feel like it's such a like specific thing that like connects you to somebody else when they call out something that you've been feeling, and you're just like, maybe I'm overreacting, like maybe like, and they're like, no, that guy fucking sucks. And one time we were hanging, like he was like, you have really nice hands, and I was like, thanks. He's like, yeah, like you could be in a dog food commercial. And I got all my stuff and I walked out of the apartment and didn't say anything, slammed the door. Like he was just like the fucking worst.
Yeah.
But like having the validation of like a third party is just always like, I think it bonds you when somebody validates like things that you've been feeling that you kind of dismiss yourself. And it was like important for me to like think of an example for like Sloane and Naomi's friendship to like show that like what Naomi brought to Sloane's life and like how she like makes Sloane a better person. So
I love that. So I had to mention it.
Jean wanted to know if anyone else thought Sloane and Naomi were going to kill Joel and Lee. I actually thought that too. I was wondering that too.
I think there's a version of this novel where that's what they do, but I think like that's like a revenge novel. So it would be cool. It's just not what this one turned out to be.
Oh yeah, that's so. Do you have any dream casting for Sloane and Naomi?
There was like one point before I like started writing, I was like Emma Stone as Sloane and Jennifer Lawrence as Naomi, just because I'm like, again, so thirsty. And I'm like, oh, what's the Hollywood adaptation that would get your girl the most attention? Like 2 Oscar winners. But I don't really have, I don't really think of people when, I think maybe this comes from my screenwriting background. Just kind of going in with like I try and make my characters as blank as I possibly can. And usually my editor will be like, we have no idea what your protagonist looks like. And I'll have to like go back and add like some stuff. But when I interned at Focus Features in script development, and I found out that in Hollywood, there's lists. There's a list, and they have actors and actresses, and like those are like, and it's all the A-list stars. So it'd be like, now it would be like Margot Robbie or, Kaylee Spaney or whatever. And then the first would be like, Jacob Elordi and whatever, like, and that's the list. And they just, whatever the part is, they offer down the list of the A-listers. And so having that information in my head, like, I think I had that like screenwriting. I took that from my screenwriting into writing prose, where I'm just like, I want them to be a blank slate. So like anyone can pick it up and either see themselves in it or like see whoever they want to see. So I try and when people ask me dream casting, I'm like, whoever would get the project the most attention, and like hopefully somebody talented. But I don't like go into it being like, I'm seeing this. The only person in So Thirsty that I did cast in my head was, what's his name? Jamie Campbell Bower, to me, is Henry. And that's because I started writing this book after the Stranger Things had come out. And he is so good in that show, being very sweet as the orderly, like being so sweet and so mild and like seeming completely harmless, to being like turns on a dime and being absolutely fucking terrifying. And I thought when I was watching it, I was like, oh, that's Henry. Like that connection was made to me. So he's the only one that I did cast in my head. We do need Matt Berry in there somewhere.
Yeah, definitely. Jamie would also just look so cool smoking.
Yeah, I bet he does. Like he probably like reeks of cigarettes in real life. Like
he
in
probably
that, like
does.
London sleaze kind of way.
No, definitely. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. This has been such a great time. I hope we can have you back next year for playing.
Anytime.
Thank you again. Everyone, I will try my best to edit this quickly so you can watch it back, and so can everyone else. But thank you all for joining as always.
Thanks so much. It was great. Great hanging out.
Great hanging out with you too. Bye, Rachel. Bye, everyone.
Bye.